My name is Regina Lewin. I was born in Warsaw, and my parents lived in Warsaw. My mother's family lived in a town called Mlawa, and
Could you spell that town?
Mlawa is spelled M-L-A-W-A. Mlawa. It's a small shtetl, and my mother's parents and grandparents lived there for a long time. And then, of course, when the war came, they were all sent out to a concentration camp, and that was the end of that. So my father was working still for the German company, and
What was he doing again?
he was leather tanning, and my mother was taken from the hiding place to the train, and then she was released because he had papers and so on that he was a German employee, so she was put then on the train to go back to Poland. And he went after her, because he figured with his papers he would be able to get her off the train. She wouldn't go all the way wherever she was going. But it ended up that he also was sent to Germany, and she was sent to Germany, and I was the only one who was not sent to Germany because I was in Warsaw and I was a child.
How old would you have been at that time?
I think I was probably 11, 12 years old.
If you back up a little, when you were going to school?
I was. Yeah, I was going to school.
And did you notice anti-Semitism while you were
in school? Yes. Yeah, in school the Polish children were very anti-Semitic.
Were there many Jews in your class?
No. No. It was a rare thing to find a Jewish child.
In your school?
Yeah, in the school, So.
Were there many Jewish people in the town?
They did.
In your town, were there many Jewish
Yeah,
people?
there were Jewish people.
Did you belong to a temple or a
No,
synagogue? Or
no.
Non-religious?
Mm-mm.
Did you remember when the bad things started happening, when the Germans came in?
Well, that was right after the 1st of September. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember having the selection?
The what?
A selection when you're...
Selection, I remember selection.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Well, selection meant that the prisoners lived slept and lived on the not on the train, but they lived on a I don't know what to call it, but anyway, they lived in a situation where they were working at the camp and were kept on the camp property. And then the selection was that at a certain time they were all called outside on on the, like a driveway, you know, and they actually were at a certain point considered for shipping to Germany, but then maybe the Germans changed their mind or something, and then they weren't shipped to Germany right at that point, but they were stayed in the area.
Did they have any idea where they were going to be shipped to?
No. Nobody knew where they were going. And my father, you know, who was supposed to have the papers and all this stuff, and he worked for the Germans, he was supposed to be protected, but he wasn't, because he was shipped to Germany.
Did you hear where he was shipped to?
Mm-mm.
When you were shipped with your mother, you were selected to go to what?
Concentration camp.
Concentration camp. Labor concentration camp. You remember the name of the camp?
Ravensbrück.
Good. Do you have any idea how that would be spelled?
Ravensbru with the umlaut CK.
Wow.
Ravensbrück.
And your mother was sent there also.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You tell me a little bit about your experience in the camp. What was it like, and what was the food like, and what were your daily actions during the camp? Were you counted in the morning, or
Yeah,
before you went to work?
Yeah, what they had in the morning, they had what they call an appel, where everybody has to come out of the barracks and has to stand in line, and then they were going to count everyone to make sure that nobody escaped. And then, after they did that, they, I don't know what else they did, because, I wasn't participating in that so much, but when they got done with their counting and all this other stuff, then everybody went back to the barrack. And
did you have something to eat before the appel or after the? Oh, it was probably after the appel, after the roll call.
The only food that we got in the morning like that would be a piece of bread and a cup of coffee or something like that. Not very much food.
And you went to work after that?
Yeah.
And you worked how many hours?
Well, I would say about 8 hours. 8 hours.
Yeah, and then what happened? You went back to your barracks. Was your work area far from where you stayed in your barracks?
Not too far.
Within walking distance?
Mm-hmm. Everything was walking. If you went to camp, it was walking, They didn't provide you with transportation. You had your legs, And they just had guards that watched a certain group that was going to be sent here or there, whatever. And that's it. Then they went back to the barracks.
Did you have a lunch hour, or so you had 2 meals a day?
Mm-hmm.
Before you went to work and when you...
Well, we worked practically the whole day. Because we started early in the morning, and then we didn't stop till dinner time. And there was no dinner. So.
You mean sometimes they did not serve dinner or evening meal?
Mm-hmm.
But you mean yes or no? They didn't.
Yes, they didn't.
So you had to live all day long and work all day long on just what they served in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They weren't terribly concerned with our welfare.
Did you experience what happened, or did this happen in camp when they had a PAL roll call, or and that someone did not show up? Do you remember anything like that? Were they punished or what?
I have a vague recall of in the morning, when everybody was supposed to go out of the tents or whatever and get lined up. There were probably a few that didn't, but I can't have a very good recollection of who they were or what they were, because you were so busy trying to survive your own lives, that you couldn't, as much as you could have cared for the other people, you just couldn't stop and express it. So
if there was punishment for some of the people that did not show up, you were unaware of what they did?
Huh? No, they didn't share it.
Okay. Let's see. So after work, after a day's work, you went back to the barracks. Maybe you would have gotten a little something to eat, and maybe not.
Maybe not.
And this went on. And what was the times of the year that you were there? Did you experience?
That was winter.
Did you have proper clothing?
Not really. But you made the best we could with what you got.
Okay, so you did that for how long? Were you working there?
In the German camp, I think I was probably almost a year, and then it was still German camp, but now were shipping to Sweden and to the countries in that area,
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't know what transpired there.
But you were shipped.
I weren't shipped.
You say you were not?
Huh?
You were not shipped?
Not shipped.
So did you stay in that camp until the end of the war, or until you were liberated?
No, I don't remember being liberated, and I don't remember how long we were there, because it was, people were being shipped to Sweden, to Denmark, to different places, and they were, that was just for one time, it was like for a concentration camp.
You mean like after the work ended in the labor camp? What year might that have been?
I think it probably was towards the end of the war.
So that could have been 1944.
Or later.
Or early 45.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the people were shipped to different places. And were they aware of where they were going?
I don't know. There was very little communication between the prisoners. Because if the Germans heard that you were talking to somebody from a different shipment, they don't wanted you to talk. So, this is it.
They wanted you to stay confused or unaware and not let you know what was happening. So what happened? So some of the people were shipped, and you stayed in the very same labor camp until the war ended.
Yeah, it was when the Allies won.
Was it the
Allied,
American people?
yeah, Allied, yeah. The American people, and then the Americans, came in and they made changes. They decided how it was being shipped, where it was being shipped, and so on. And they did not promise you anything. They didn't promise you even next meal's food. But they didn't promise you definitely that you were going to be released. They didn't promise that. So you just had to stand there and wait.
Did that become a displaced persons camp? Or you stayed there until when? Until you got information about where you were going? Where's your mother with you at that time?
My mother?
Yeah. Was she with you at that time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what happened after that? She was with you, and the Americans liberated you. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, then what happened? You were evidently in a camp. How did you get your next assignment? I mean, were you aware of what happened to your father?
I recollect that somehow it came back from the train that my father was shipped to. Where was he shipped to? I guess some other country in Europe,
Could have been Auschwitz.
No.
It was not Auschwitz.
No.
It could be Treblinka.
Could have been Treblinka. And, there was very little speaking to each other, so nobody knew what was going on. It was all a guessing game.
So let's see if you could tell me what finally happened. I mean, you were unaware of what was happening or what you were going to do or where you were going to go.
Well...
So what happened? Did the Germans leave? Did you see where they left the area and the Americans came in?
The Germans were there, and they didn't leave. And then, the Americans took over, and...
So they captured the Germans that were there, is that? They captured the Germans that were there?
I think so. I don't know.
Okay.
Because, I was either on the train or off the train. And I have
So you were on the train, but did you have any idea where you were going? And you were with your mother? And what did you hear about your mother's family or your father's family? Did you hear anything about
The
them?
only thing I heard about my father is that there was the thought that the group that got on the train at that time went, I don't know where they went, but they didn't go far away, And then, I have no idea. Everything was very secretive.
Yeah, but you were with your mother on the train going somewhere. But you were not sure where.
The what?
You were not sure where you were going.
No.
I mean, you were put on the train. Put on the train by the Americans?
I don't remember seeing the Americans.
Oh, okay. So where did you wind up?
I wound up in Sweden.
Okay.
We went, in Sweden was, we came from Denmark to Sweden on a ship. And then over there, the Swedes were very kind, you know. They were very helpful to us. They fed us, and they gave us some new clothing, you know, whatever was needed. And then basically they more or less said we did everything that we were supposed to do, and now we don't want you around.
Another way helped you, and then they said, good luck. And that
Yeah,
was it.
yeah, right. So, what can I tell you? I can only tell you that I don't think that it went the way maybe that the people who were organizing this thing knew what was going on.
It was probably so new. I assume that was 1945 at that time.
Right.
So the last place you were at was in Sweden?
Right.
And then what happened? And where did you go from Sweden?
We stayed in Sweden. The Swedes put us to work, fed us, provided us with places to live, and were very, very helpful, very, very courteous, very helpful. They tried hard for everybody on the train to get located, but there wasn't easy, you know, to locate the refugees.
Okay.
So it's not a very, very exciting chapter, but it's the way it was.
How long do you think you were in Sweden?
I ended up being in Sweden for a year and a half.
A year and a half. So, okay. It's funny how this these blinds are moving. Okay, after a year and a half, and you were with your mother all this time, and you were both working for the Swedes and well fed and taken care of, and you had decent clothes. Okay. How did you? What was happened after that?
Well, we made friends with some Swedish people, and they were very helpful to us, you know.
Did they help you find a way to come to America? Or did you want to come to
We
America?
wanted to come to America, but we couldn't do it through the Swedes.
How did that happen? I mean, how did you manage to get transportation to America? Do you remember? How did that happen?
Well, we expressed our wish that we wanted to go to America, and we wanted to be released from the German people's hold on us, you know. And I don't know that they ever listened, but I guess this one they listened. And they said, well, you got camps there, you know, why don't you go to one of those camps? Why don't you go to that camp, you know, whatever.
I guess those were displaced persons camps.
Yeah. But when we got out, it was crazy.
You're a little sleepy.
Huh?
You're a little sleepy. Can you just tell about when you went to America?
No, I'm not sleepy.
Yeah. I don't want to take advantage of it, you know, by speaking. So, okay, so what happened? Were you put on a ship to come to America? That was arranged, and your
Well, my mother had two brothers that were waiting for us in New York. And so when we came, we were taken off the ship,
in
the
New
German
York?
ship.
Oh, the
ship, yeah. and we were put in on an American ship. And we weren't separated, my mother and I, and it was just a different thing because we weren't dealing with Germans, you know. Now we're dealing with Americans. And anyway, the Americans provided us with decent food, you know, decent clothing, whatever, and
they made arrangements for you to travel to America?
Yeah, so then they just got papers for us and for everything. As a matter of fact, we had to make a trip to Stockholm to the consulate.
Okay.
Swedish consulate. And when they verified all these things that we said, they issued papers. Mm-hmm. And so, and a ticket on the ship, you know. So we went to Sweden and Stockholm. Not Stockholm either, where a smaller town in Sweden. But then eventually we got to Stockholm, and we just were released basically at that time because like I say, my two uncles were waiting in United States on the dock.
You lived in New York?
Huh?
Your uncles, did they live in New York?
No, one lived in Chicago and one lived in Kansas. But they filled out all the papers, and the papers, what they meant was that we will not be a burden on Americans, you know. So they guaranteed that if we get off the ship in the United States, we will be provided for by the American government, and they won't have to give us anything. So yeah, so that was the arrangement.
It probably would have been more difficult if you had no family.
Right. We wouldn't have ever gotten this because the papers, you know, is the thing that was so important.
Sure.
Otherwise, you know, you come here as a refugee, which a lot of people did, and there's nobody to speak for you, you know. And when you came like that on an American ship and with everything, that amounted to something, you know. It meant that you were protected by the American government.
Yep. So please tell me what happened after you met your uncles, and you know, when they picked you up when you.
Yeah, when we met.
Where did you arrive in New York? Do you remember?
In New York, we arrived.
Did you see the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah.
Yeah. That probably was.
That was very touching. Yes, indeed. But you know, then you know, when we left the ship, my uncle was waiting on the pier. And with a car, and with
Wow.
and they took us to Chicago. So it was like a different life.
Yeah. So can you bring us up to date after Chicago? What happened there, and how long did you live in Chicago?
Well, we lived in Chicago probably for close to a year, because my uncle got an apartment. And my mother and myself, you know, we stayed at the apartment. And then my uncle was very strong on education. So he said, how old are you, you know, whatever it was. He says, you got to go to school. So he enlisted me and enrolled me in a school, and I started going to school.
You remember where you went to school? What school it was?
Chicago school. I can't remember the name of it, but I think maybe Joe remembers. And I started going to school. And what did I take? I took I think I took
Was it like high school?
yeah. I think I
So you would have been what, like about 14?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so anyway, after I was, I went to grammar school, very short time. And then I went to high school, and
Could you speak English at that time?
no,
Nothing. No.
but I was determined that I would. So, so then of course, I started studying English, and
You probably learned quickly, I'm sure.
yeah, and then I
What languages did you speak when you were in Germany?
German and Polish.
And Yiddish? No Yiddish? German and Polish.
But anyway, I learned Swedish too. I spoke a little bit of Swedish, yeah. But my whole aim was to be an American. I wanted to learn English right away, and I wanted to go to work, and I wanted to be an American. Well, I succeeded somewhat, because I did succeed to learn English, and I succeeded in being able to go to work and work in a place downtown Chicago. It was what was their business? But
Is that your first job in Chicago?
yeah, and what was their business? I'm trying to think what their business was. But anyhow, I did work for them, and then when I graduated from that, I went to another school. My mother went to the night school, to learn English. And it's so long ago, My mother did try to learn English.
She what?
She tried to learn English.
Did she accomplish that?
Somewhat. Yeah.
But not as fast as you, I'm sure.
No, and maybe not as accurately, but she did.
But you lived together when you were in school.
I used to say to her, Mom, I'm going to speak to you in English and you speak to me in Polish. So
That was interesting.
yeah, so that's the way. But boy, there was nobody happier than me to be an American citizen, because soon after that I took my citizenship, and I was just in heaven. When, I passed the exam and all this other stuff, and I wanted to be American.
And you succeeded.
I did.
You did.
I did.
How did you meet your husband? How did that come about?
Well, I was going to
So you
school.
would have been young. You would have been like 15 or what,
No,
16?
we got married. I was 21 and he was 24.
Okay.
But the way we met, was because of somebody. He was going to college at that time too. He was because of his GI Bill. He was going to college, and he was he was trying to get a degree and all this other stuff. And the way we met was there was a gathering of Jewish young people who came from all over, and some of them from the south of the United States. And we met in this rabbi's house, all these young people. And he and I both were trying to do our thing, and he then asked me if he could take me out to a dance at the college where he was going, and I said, yeah, I'll go. So that was the first time that we met each other, and then we went to a dance at the school, and after that...
What school would that have been? Do you remember?
What school was it up there? It was, I think, it was started out, I think, that it was in the Albany district,
Albany Park district? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's where the rabbi lived. And anyway, so I got a job in a Walgreens.
Okay.
And Joe, of course, was still in college, and so there were girls that came from the south, to Chicago, and they were all meeting in this rabbi's house, and I was one of them.
Mostly Jewish.
The rabbi?
Mostly Jewish girls.
Yeah.
Right.
And so so he asked me if he could take me out on a date, and I said, okay. And he says, well, my college is having a some kind of a dance. I can't remember what it was. And he says, would you mind accompanying me? And I said, no, I would like to. So we got together and we went to this dance. And I met a lot of young people, young Jewish people, from in the school. And of course, Joe tells me now that from the moment he saw me, I was it. And I said, well, it was kind of the same with me, because I came home, he took me home, and my mother said, how did you like this young man that took you out? And I says, I did. And he said, she said, well, what do you think of him? And I said, I'm going to marry him. And she said, what? You were out on one date and you already married the guy? I said, yeah, I'm going to marry him. And I did. So, it was love from first sight.
That's wonderful.
My mother didn't think that it was going to happen, but it did.
And she was pleasantly surprised, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do after you got married? So you got married in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And I had a job.
Yep. Tell me about your job.
Huh?
Tell me about your job.
My job?
After you were married.
Yeah. And my job was a company that was downtown Chicago, and it was bookkeeping that I did. They had the bookkeeping machines and all that. And so I did bookkeeping, and it was interesting to me, and it had a paycheck, so everything was in favor of it. And the way we actually, Joe and I met, outside of that dance was I got a job, part-time job at Walgreens. And at this counter. And Joe came in to buy something, shaving or whatever. And that's what he did, and then he said, oh, yeah, I remember seeing you, da-da-da. And he said, how come you never called me? And Joe said, well, I couldn't because we didn't have a phone. So that was it, And he said, well, I'll give you my phone and I give you whatever it was. And, this one worked a little bit, this one worked a little bit, and it ended up that we met.
Good.
He said he walked into the Walgreens and he saw me across the store at the counter. And so he says, oh, yeah, that's the one, So he walked up to the counter and he said to me, well, I have been trying to get in touch with you because I wanted to invite you to this dance and so on and so on. And he said, but now that we are here and you are here and I'm here, so why can't we make a real date and get to know each other and so on? So I said, what have I got to lose, okay? So that was our first date, and that's when I came home. When he took me home, I told my mother that I'm going to marry him, and she thought I was crazy. And
you knew you were gonna marry him, but did he ask you for your hand? Did he ask?
No,
but you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. So he did. I just sort of.
You had a feeling.
Yeah, I just went forward, and then I met his parents, and my parents. He met my mother, and that was it. That was the time. So then we wanted to get married. We didn't want to just date. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't get married because we had no money. And I think it was a rabbi that said, well, we've got to figure out how we are going to do it that you can get married. So we had to get a license, and Joe was broke. He didn't have money for the license, but I was working.
Oh, so you had money.
So I paid for the license. And anyway, then we had the wedding. It was friends of ours. We had a lot of different friends, and they all came to the wedding, and a friend of Joe's, who was a chef, he arranged the food for the wedding, and one way or another we got married.
Good. Yeah.
Then we went on a honeymoon, to Starved Rock. Yeah, we have pictures to prove it too. And we had, and my mother liked him. My mother liked him, and I don't think his mother liked me, but but that's not always the case. Right. That the mother of the groom likes the young woman. So anyhow. Everything worked out fine.
That's good. So then after you were married, you wound up, when did you move to Wilmette?
Wilmette?
Yeah.
No, we were in Chicago for a while because my uncle rented the apartment, for a while, and so that was home. And I just kept going with school and everything, and Joe was busy with school, so we really weren't planning on getting married right then and there.
Yeah.
But we did. We did. The rabbi said, oh, come on, just get married, stop playing around. And so we got married.
That's good.
And
You got to bring us up to date up until now. You lived, where you lived after you moved out of Chicago. Then you moved.
Well, we moved to a town called Hazelcrest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we bought a house there, and our children grew up in Hazelcrest, and I was still working. Joe was already by that time working, and
what kind of job did he have at that time?
well, he started working for New York Life, and I was with this company, that I was before. So then he was recalled. He went to, he was shipped to, where was it? I'm trying to think. Well, he can tell you,
Yeah,
but anyway, he was in the service still, and then he was on a ship in Brooklyn Navy Yard, and I came to visit him in Brooklyn Navy Yard. And then he had a sister and brother-in-law who lived also out east. So we went to visit them at the time, and they said, so what's the matter with you guys? Why don't you get married? Because they were married. So we said, well, we'll think about it, and then we decided, okay, that's a good idea. And we got married.
Tell me about when you moved out of Chicago, though, or your job that you had in Wilmette.
No, that was not connected with my job, because I went to school then, to college, and I had. The next job that I had was working for, I'm trying to think of who it was, but anyway, it was a legitimate job, and I was making pretty good money, and that was downtown Chicago, off of downtown of Chicago. And when I started really seriously working, and when I was seriously making money, I just had a feeling, that I'm going to stay with it. I want to proceed. I want to go forward. So I did start going to school again. And this time, it was a regular college, and I was taking classes, and I wanted to further myself.
Let me see. I should have fixed this before, but that's okay. Stay the way you are.
I didn't want to always be a clerk. So, anyway, it ended up that I went back to work and full-time already, and we had a better income, so we rented an apartment in Hyde Park. We we made a lot of friends. We're living around the University of Chicago, you know, so we made a lot of friends. And things started looking up.
We have about 6 minutes left.
Yeah, okay. So anyhow, he continued with school, I continued with school, and then when he graduated, we rented an apartment in Hyde Park. And I was continued to work, and he continued to work, and we'd set aside a little money, you know, and we were home free.
That's good. But tell me about your move. You eventually moved to Wilmette.
Yeah, so then my daughter was to the point where she had to go to school. And we didn't want her to go to school where we lived, you know, in Hazel Crest, because they didn't have a good school district. So we talked about it, and I said I would either like to go to Evanston or Wilmette or someplace where their schools are good, and I know that she's going to get a good education. So that's what happened. We wanted her in the Wilmette school, and if she lived in Wilmette school, we had to live in Wilmette, you know. So we moved to Wilmette, and she finished Wilmette school, and then she went on to University of Illinois and got good education. As a matter of fact, when she graduated, she got a job with the aviation.
Oh.
Yeah.
NASA.
Huh?
Was it NASA?
No. She got a job with the something with aviation, you know. And anyway, she was already by that time had her degree.
Yeah.
So she got a good job and it's a good pay, and she's still there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Didn't you have a son also?
Yeah. Our son was different. He didn't want to have all this working and studying and all that stuff. So he didn't want to do that. But by that time, you know, my daughter was well situated, and she married a lawyer, and they both bought a house and had children of their own. So things were settling down, you know.
Yeah. How did it work that when you left Wilmette, you came to Arizona? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, when we left Wilmette, it was, the reason was we started asking, you know, are we going to stay here or are we going to move on or whatever? And we decided that we will try to move on. And Joe said, I don't want to live in that cold climate. You know, he had a bad heart and everything, and so he didn't want to be stressed like that. He wanted to be in a climate that he could tolerate well. And so that's why we wanted Evanston. But Evanston was not a good place for us because Evanston was very, very anti-Semitic, and you know, it just was not a good fit. So we decided that we are not going to go to Evanston. We're going to move to what did I say?
A warmer climate, huh?
Well, before we went to warmer climate, we moved to what was it? Did we move? Did I tell you we moved to Evanston?
You did move to Evanston?
I don't know. I can't remember. But we moved to
But from Wilmette.
from
From
to Wilmette.
You came to Arizona?
Yeah. Yeah, from Wilmette we came to Arizona because, like I said, he needed a better climate. And I didn't care because I could get a job anywhere.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, we only have a couple minutes left, about the job you had in Wilmette and how long you had.
Yeah, well, in Wilmette, I went to school before that, and I got my degree in library science. And so when the time came to get a job, I applied at the Wilmette Library for a librarian's job. And I got it. And I started working for the Wilmette Library. I loved it. I loved all the people there. I loved the place. I loved the books, everything. And I felt like it was a heaven.
Yes.
So I stayed there. I worked there for 23 years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and Joe did his thing with the insurance, and I did my thing with the library, and all worked out well.
And then you moved to Arizona.
And then, like I say, the doctor told me, just like your wife,
Yeah.
he better get out of here because he had 3 heart surgeries.
Wow.
And
While you were in Wilmette?
Yeah. 3 or 4 bypasses, And the doctor told him, you want to stay alive, you better get out of here. So we said, okay, that's good enough. And we just, like I say, I applied to the Wilmette Library. I got the job, so that was already halfway. And then we just decided that, do we want to hang around here and take a chance that something goes wrong? No. So we said, we are going to move. We're going to move.
And you moved to Arizona.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I had a lot of friends at the library who were familiar with Arizona, and they told me that that was the ideal climate, and it was wonderful, and you'll love it, and all that. So I said, okay, we'll try it. And we did. And that's how we went to Wilmette.
You went from Wilmette to Arizona, and in Arizona you lived in Scottsdale.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are staying in McDowell Village, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're almost out of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Unless you have more that you would like to say.
No, well, I mean,
Because I could put in another tape.
I'm a person I'm going to be going to school for the rest of my life.
Good.
Because they have, we just registered, Joe registered for painting, and I registered for Spanish.
Good.
So I'm going to be taking Spanish. She's going to take painting, and when we get finished with that, there will be something else. So, I like to go to school.
That's wonderful.
And and as long as I can get a decent job, that I don't, that is not like, I know I have friends who get jobs at Macy's or something like that. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I want a job where I'm learning something new. So that's what it is. And I'm going to start the classes. I think it's like in a week. And then I'm going to also do a class in computers.